Oh, 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 no.
I don't need negative energy, wrap me in positive synergy. I have been doubted through life, been there and done that with trifling people who told me my style would not work. I told them they wrong, been struggling too long. This song is for you, I'm proving you wrong.
Get out my way, get out my way, get out my way, get out my way.
I'm a genuine person. Like if I love you, I love you. If I don't mess with you, I don't mess with you. It's as simple as that.
There comes a time when we heed a certain call, when the world must come together as one. There are people dying. Oh, when it's time to lend a hand to life, the greatest gift of all. We can't go on pretending day by day that someone somewhere will soon make a change. We are a part of God's great big family, and the truth, love is all we need. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. God has shown us by turning stones to bread, and so we all must lend a helping hand. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. Oh, there's a chance to make it. We're saving our lives. Yes, do we make a better day? Just you and me. We're down and out, let's see it no more at all. But if you just believe, it's not where we can fall. Well, let's realize all that a change can only come when we stand together as one. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's start giving. We're singing all night, to make a better day, just you and me. We are the world, we are the children, we are the ones who make a brighter day, so let's There's a choice we're making. We're saving our whole life. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a better day. So let's start giving. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. Come on, let me hear it. We are the world. We are the children. We are the children. We are the ones who make a better day. So let's start giving. Let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. Come on now, let me hear it. We are the world. We are the world. We are the children. We are the children. We are the ones who make a brighter day. So let's start giving. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our lives. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. Yeah. We are the world. We are the world. We are the children. We are the ones who make a better day. So let's start giving. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. Yeah, we're saving our own lives. It's true, we'll make a better day. We are the world. We are the ones who make a better day. So let's start giving. So choose the way. We're saving our lives. We'll make a better day. We are the world. We are the children. Yes, sir. We are the ones that make a better day. So let's start giving. There's a choice we're making. We're saving our own lives. It's true, we make a better day. Just you and me. Thank God. We are the children. We are the ones who make a better day. So let's start giving. All right, did you hear what I said?
What's going on, everybody? What's going on? Good morning, good afternoon, whatever side of the city or side of the earth or side of the country you are on. It may be a different time zone. I want to welcome y'all to Atmos Love Zone. We are going to be getting back into the transcripts from yesterday. I read yesterday up to about 1763, which is in my playlist if you want to go back. My sister Diva Divine Light read from 1763 to 1793. If you want to go back and listen to those, go to her channel, Diva the Divine Light, here on YouTube, and subscribe to her channel. Me and her pretty much bounce back and forth on the transcripts. But I will give y'all kind of like a recap of what was through 1763 through 1793, leading up to what we're doing today. Pretty much, Kenneth finished up his cross-examination of Addie. Addie is no joke. She is the truth. Okay, she was not backing down from him. And, you know, so you had to, I think that out of all of the cross-examinations that Kenneth had, Addie was the hardest one. She was the most difficult because she simply was not letting him boss her around. So that was incredible. Also, Mr. Let's see what his name was. Derek Deshaun Devon or something like that. He went on the stand. He was someone who worked with RKelly, dealing with some promotions and tours and stuff like that. You know, so they were pretty much talking to him. I think we're leading into that But I guess RKelly, was working with him. He helped set up some tours. He used to work for Cheryl Mack, and Cheryl Mack put her on to RKelly, and then they started working out trying to get business deals. And I guess Live Nation is a touring company that he helped RKelly book some tours with, and all this kind of stuff. And then it got messed up with some money and all kind of crazy stuff. So it looks like the prosecution was pretty much just trying to break down some of the building up his entourage and people that worked with him and what they did while they worked with him. Okay. So today we are going to start at 1793. I'm sure a lot of y'all, this is Sunday morning, right? So people at church, people are watching the game or getting ready to watch the game, which I totally understand, because as soon as I get off here, why y'all think I went on right after church? I want to watch the game. Okay. So we're going to get into this, y'all, because I don't want to get too far behind, because it is a lot for us to read. And so we're going to get straight into this. Okay. So this looks like it's a sidebar that was going on. Sidebar conference was held on the record outside of hearing of the jury. So the judge says, I read the materials on this, and here's what I think. You're going to lead through this. You want to bring out the fact that he wasn't trying to say that she was a rat, correct? And to send a different kind of message to Kelly. The problem is the message that he sends, that he wants to send to the defendant, as I know, you're messing around with younger. So just to kind of backtrack a little bit, y'all, it looks like, let me see here. Just so y'all kind of understand. It looks like Mr. Stevens was saying something about RKelly's messing with younger girls, messing with younger kids. And I guess the government was trying to, let me see. Let me go back a little bit so y'all can kind of understand what we're leading into, so people that may be lost. All right, let me go back a little bit. Okay, this was Canic. I don't want to go too far back. Let me see here. So I'm going to go here right after the break. So I'm going back here to page 1789. And I'm going to read forward so y'all can kind of understand what we're leading into, okay? Okay. West Coast Bellas, thank you. Okay, I got you. Okay, got your email. Okay, perfect. I got you, sister. I will send everything over as soon as I'm off of here, okay? Latrice B, what's up? Take, what's going on? You got it? Okay, I like to skip ahead so I know when Ross fans are making. Yep, I feel you. What's up, Kanza? How you doing? West Coast Bells, I got you. As soon as I get off here, I will send over the mother load to you, sister. All right, y'all. So right here looks like the court says the witness can step down. So I guess they were talking about, I'm showing you what's marked for. Hold on. Okay, maybe I need to go back. Hold on. There's a lot of stuff I'm missing. I don't want to. Hold on. Okay, Linda Finch. I called her, didn't pick it up, but I texted her. All right. I'm gonna go back a little bit, y'all, because I want to make sure that I know what I'm talking about when I lead into this. Okay, so I'm gonna start right here at 1785. Okay, this is the direct examination of Devon Stevens with the government. Okay, so it says here, the government says, is it a text message conversation? Devon says, text message, yes. The government says, and is this screenshots from your phone? Stevens says, yes. The lawyer said, move to admit government's exhibit 2255B. Mr. Cannon said, no objection. The government says exhibit 255B was received in evidence. The judge says, that's an evidence you can publish. Mr. Shahida says, thank you. The The government says, with the first page in this exhibit, the text in white with the black background in white. Hold on. Starting with the first page of this exhibit, the text in white with the black background in white. Who is that from? Mr. Stevens says that's from Mr. Kelly. The lawyer says, are your responses in blue? Devon Stevens says yes. The lawyer says, now looking at the text message that the defendant sent you, what date is that from? Devon Stevens says November 25th of 2014. The lawyer said, what were you working on around that time? Stevens said at the time, that was the renegotiation of his agreement. The lawyer said, with whom? Stevens said, with RCA. The lawyer said, and was that something that you were working on? Stevens said, yes. The lawyer said, and looking at this text message that he sent you, what was it about? Mr. Devon Stevens said, what I can recall, I think it's about the team, the whole team working together. Because I think at this point, I was working on more music, just trying to formulate the team really is what that conversation was about. The lawyer said, well, when the defendant texted you, when the defendant texted you, I just called her and she didn't pick up. But I text her, who did you understand her and she to be in that sentence? Stevens said, Linda Minch. The lawyer said, now on the bottom of the first page, did you write a response saying, agree, let's go fourth quarter down by 10? Devon Stevens says, correct. The lawyer said, what did you mean by that? Devon Stevens says, let's get it going. Just trying to motivate him and let's close out and keep moving forward. Go down by 10. The lawyer said, close out what? Stevens said, any deals that bring our team together, whatever we need to do to keep moving. The lawyer said, I'm going to show you what's in a moment, page 2 of Government's Exhibit 255B. I asked that this be for the jury only. At the top of this is the top just a continuation of the text from the defendant that we're looking at on the first page, plus your response that just went over. He says yes. The lawyer said, and then the series of text messages underneath that are those all text messages from you to the defendant? Stevens says correct. The lawyer said, and the first one, is that dated November 25th, 2014? Stevens says yes. The government said, and you wrote, King, you're still there. Yo. Stevens said yes. The lawyer said, why did you send that? Stevens said, I think at the time he stated that he was going back to Chicago and he'll be back. I was just wondering, was he still in Atlanta? The lawyer said, and then the next text message here on March 21st, 2015, is that right? Stevens said, correct. The lawyer said, what did you write there? Stevens said, King, you good? Because I wasn't getting any response. The lawyer said, had you had any communications with the defendant between November 25th and March 21st, 2015? That's a big gap. Hold on, November, December, January, February, March. Good grief, that's like 4 months. Hold on, what's going on? I hate when the pen busts in my pocket. All right. So he said no. Then the lawyer said, well, when you said King, who are you referring to? Devon Stevens said, Mr. Kelly. The lawyer said, now the next text message, is that from you to him, the defendant, on July 23rd, 2015? Stevens said, yes. The lawyer said, well, what did you write there? He said, you ready? Here I come. The lawyer said, why did you write that? Mr. Stevens said, just letting him know. I think at that point, I received a letter back from, I sent a letter back from Linda Mint stating that the work that I did and I wouldn't be compensated. Wow. Huh. So the lawyer said, did you send another message on August 21st, 2015? Stephen said, correct. The lawyer said, does it say, without saying a name, does it say a certain name there? Stephen said, yes. Government said, and what is depicted after that name? Stephen said, a rat emoji. The government said, you sent that to the defendant. Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, you mentioned that you ended up at some point retaining a lawyer in connection with your dispute with the defendant. Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, did you ever end up filing a lawsuit against him? Stephen said, no, I never filed a lawsuit. The lawyer said, why not? Mr. Koenig said, objection. The court said, sustained. The judge said, I'm showing you what is marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 75. The judge said, Ms. Shahida, I'm going to stop you. Is this a good time for your morning break? Shahida said, sure. The judge says, ladies and gentlemen, we'll break for about 10 minutes. Please don't talk about the case. We'll see you in a few minutes. The courtroom deputy says, all rise. The jury exits the courtroom. The judge says the witness can step down. The witness steps down. The judge says, do you know how much longer you have? Ms. Shahida said, a few minutes. The judge said, and then is this your witness, Mr. Koenig? Mr. Koenig said, yes. The judge said, do you think we'll fit in another witness this morning? Mr. Koenig said, I'm pretty confident we'll at least be able to start another witness. The judge says, well, we'll be in recess then. There's a brief recess. Upon the witness resumes to stand, the jury enters the courtroom. The judge says you may be seated. The courtroom deputy says the witness is reminded that he's still under oath. The judge says, go ahead. Ms. Shahida says, here's the government speaking. She says, I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 75. Without saying this person's name, do you recognize this person? Mr. Stevens said, yes. The lawyer said, and do you, knowing this person's full name without saying? Devon Stevens said, yes. The lawyer said, I'm showing the witness only what is marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 75A. Is this the same photo I just showed you? Stevens said, correct. The lawyer said, and does this have this individual's full name underneath? He said, yes. The lawyer said, and is this the name you know the individual by? He said, yes. The government said, I move to admit it, Government's Exhibit 75A and would publish it to the jury only. The judge said, any objection? Mr. Koenig said, I thought it was in evidence. The judge says, I thought so too. Ms. Shahida says, it's slightly different. May we publish it for the jury only? The judge says, yes, okay. It was received. And then the lawyer says, for purposes for your testimony here today, we're going to refer to the person in Government's Exhibit 75 and 75A as Jane, okay? Mr. Stevens said, okay. The lawyer said, have you ever met Jane? Devon Stevens said, yes. The lawyer said, around when did you meet her? Stevens said, 2020. The lawyer said, what were the circumstances under which you met her? He said, Jane contacted me through social media. Mr. Koenig said, I want to object to the relevance beyond the scope of the charges here. The judge says, you can just say objection. She said, you can just say objection. Objection is overruled. You could go ahead. Stephen said, she contacted me through social media to ask me. Koenig said, objection. The judge says, the conversation is, I'll sustain it. The lawyer said, for what purpose were you meeting with Jane? Stephen said, to help her with her career. The lawyer said, music career? He said music career. The judge said when. Mr. Heater said 2020. The witness said 2020. Then the lawyer said, what, if anything, did you learn from Jane regarding the text with her name and the rat emoji that you had sent to the defendant? Mr. Canick said, objection. The court said, can I see the parties on the side with the court reporter? Here we go. Another sidebar, y'all. Another sidebar. I'm going to start getting me a little announcement whenever a sidebar comes up. All right, here we go. So the judge says, look, I read the materials on this, and here's what I think. You're going to lead through this. You want to bring out the fact that he wasn't trying to say that she was a rat, correct? And to send a different kind of message to Kelly. The problem is the message that he wants to send the defendant is, I know you're messing around with a younger. Mr. Heater said, because I was avoiding asking that question because of the hearsay objection. Now, what I'm trying to get is a prior consistent statement that Jane had made to the defendant about what happened to this witness, about what happened after the defendant received the text. Then the judge said, I think it's relevant because there is testimony from her. I don't remember if there was cross-examination. I think there was about this message with the rat. I think it's relevant to show that he was not trying to get her in trouble, which I think is the purpose for bringing it out. Is that right? The government said, Your Honor, Jane testified when she was on the stand that after an incident that occurred after the defendant received this text from Divine Stevens, where he then hit her, including with a shoe. So I think if he's permitted to respond to this question, he will include that she told him that happened. That's what I was trying to bring out as a prior consistent statement. Mr. Canick said, you can't bring out a prior consistent statement without the witness having been challenged as to application. The judge says, was she? That's what I don't remember. The government said she was challenged wholesale on everything she said during the entire testimony, including that she was not in fact hit, that this is all made up by her. So that's what I'm trying to elicit. The judge says, I think, though, that even under that theory, the motive to fabricate has arisen by the time she makes a statement. Mr. Heater says, I'll move on. That's the end of the sidebar. The judge says, go ahead. Mr. Heater says, no further questions. The court says, cross-examination. Mr. Canick says, brief. The judge says, everybody makes that promise. She is funny. She is funny, y'all. All right, here we go. Edmonds did the first part of his testimony last night, and Diva did more this morning. Yep, correct. All right. What's up, Team Libra? How you doing? All right, y'all. Y'all hit that like button. Hit the like button. What's up, Chi-Town OG? What's good? What's good, Chi-Town OG? All right, y'all. Here we go. Let's move on. Mr. Canick, y'all. Here go the cross-examine. Here go the, as they like to call, the mechanic is coming. The mechanic is coming. I tell you what, the mechanic, he must have left his tools at home going against Addie. Addie worked him. Addie worked him. All right, here we go, y'all. Let's see. Let's see if Canick can redeem himself. All right, here we go. Let me get into my Canick stance. You know what I'm saying? Let me get my. All right, here we go. Here we go. Canick, you testified and told us earlier about these basketball games where you got a few rebounds. Stephen said yes. Canick said, and you passed the ball out. Stephen said, yes, sir. Canick said, now people were in the audience to watch those games. Am I correct? Stephen said, yes, sir. Canick said, describe the gym for us. Stephen said, it's kind of like, one way in a sense. Kenny said, let me see if I can help you. Let me see if I can help. Bleachers? Stephen said, yes, like seats, bleachers. Then there was the goal underneath there, kind of like a cycling bike and other things. And chairs isolated underneath on the right side of where the basket is. Kenny said, you testified and told the jury that Mr. Kelly would have females with him at the game. Do you remember telling us that? Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, those females would be in those chairs. Am I correct? He said, correct, but not in the bleachers. Kenny said, not in the bleachers. In the chairs? Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, did you notice people smoking weed in the bleachers? Stephen said, no. Kenny said, no. You played in all the games. Stephen said, a lot of games. Yes. Kenny said, you never saw folks drinking in the game. Stephen said, no, sir. Kenny said, did you see other celebrities at the game? Stephen said, there's been other celebrities. Kenny said, Usher? Stephen said, yes, Usher has been there. Kenny said, celebrities come through fairly often. Am I correct? Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, in fact, you associated with a lot of celebrities. Am I correct? Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, and they would come to the game. Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, when the young ladies that Mr. Kelly bought were attending the game, they would sit in the chairs behind the basket. Stephen said, off to the right. Kenny said, and sometimes the ball would get loose and go into that direction. Am I correct? Stephen said, yes, sir. Kenny said, when the ball got loose and when in that direction, they would try to get themselves out of the way of the ball and people chasing the ball. Am I correct? Stephen said, yes. Kenny said, they would turn their body and look towards the wall as they were turning their body. Am I correct? Stephen said, correct. Kenny said, that's it. The court said, all right. Any redirect? Shahida said, just briefly. The judge says, go ahead. This is a redirect now. The judge says, you were just the government says you would just ask some questions about the basketball court at your house where the defendant will play games. The chairs where these females were sitting. Can you tell the jury again where that was? Stephen said, kind of like underneath the basket to the right. The lawyer said, while the game is being played, which way were the females facing? Stephen said, facing the game. The lawyer said, during the game, was everyone, all the players playing? Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, passing the ball around. Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, shooting the ball. Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, who, if anyone, did the females cheer for? Stephen said, they only cheered for Mr. Kelly. The lawyer said, no one else. Stephen said, no one else. The government said, now you were asked some questions. When the ball, when someone would have to get the ball, it would go out of bounds or whatever. Do you recall those questions? Stephen said, yes. The lawyer said, what would those females do when that happened? Stephen said, sometimes cross their legs and look at the wall. The lawyer said, and who was approaching when they would do that. Stephen said it could be another celebrities or other ball players who may approach. Government said, any other men? Stephen said, other men? Lawyer said, apart from celebrities. Stephen said, apart from celebrities. The government said, no further questions. Koenig said, I have to ask this question. Redirect. Mr. Koenig comes back up and says, there weren't any female players in the basketball game. Stephen said, no, sir. Koenig said, it wouldn't be a female running to chase the ball. Am I correct? Stephen said, no, sir. Koenig said, I'm trying to think if there is anything else before I sit down. Before I sit down. I don't think there is anything else, Your Honor. Then the judge says, okay, nothing else. Mr. Heater says, nothing further. Then the judge says, okay, you can step down. Thank you so much. Okay. All right. So I got your message, Lady Nemesis. It said it's difficult to follow the readings when now we have to go back and forth between you and Diva Divine, like just letting you know from our view. Okay. But here's a question though. I got a question because I've heard that before. But so I'm gonna ask y'all, would y'all rather us do y'all want us all reading the same stuff so that way y'all can stay on you know what I mean, consistent with the same person reading? Or do y'all like it when I read 30, she read 30, I read 30, she read 30, sometimes they read together? I want it to be easier for y'all too. Lady said it's understandable, but it's a lot of reading for him to the top of a full-time job and family. Yeah, it is. It is, and it is extremely impossible to do it all by yourself. That's why we do have other, I got Diva helping me out. But I want to do what is easier for y'all too, because I do understand the going back and forth. I do understand that. Oh boy, here we go, y'all. Here we go. All right. It's time for Lewis, y'all. The government calls Lewis. Lewis is going to take the witness stand. Government deputy says, please raise your hand. The witness is sworn. Okay, thank you. All right, here we go. The witness says, I do. Lewis says, called as a witness, having been first duly sworn and affirmed, was examined and testified as follows. Here we go. The judge says a couple of things before we get started. Our court reporter takes down everything that you say, so just don't speak too quickly. It makes their job harder. The witness says, okay. The judge says, for the same reasons, make sure that you let whichever lawyer is asking you questions finish before you start speaking again, so it doesn't make their job too hard. If there is a question that you need to have repeated or it isn't clear, tell me. I'll have the lawyer rephrase it. And just do your best to answer only the questions that you are being asked. So Lewis says, yes. Lewis says, okay. And then the judge says, go ahead. Miss Geddes is coming up for the examination of John Doe number 1. Here we go, y'all. Here we go. Lawyer says, good afternoon. Lewis says, hello. The lawyer says, I'm showing the witness only what's marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 64. Do you recognize what is shown in Government's Exhibit 64? Hold on. All right, here we go. Okay, boom, boom. Lewis says yes. The lawyer says, what is that? Lewis says, it's me. The lawyer says, is that a photo of you? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer says, approximately how old were you when this photograph was taken? Lewis says, 16 or 17. The lawyer says, the government offers Government's Exhibit 64. The judge says, any objection? Koenig says, no objection. And then Ms. Geddes says, may I publish this? The court says, yes. The lawyer says, I'm now going to show the witness only what is marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 64A. Is this the photograph in 64A, the same photograph that was just shown in Government's Exhibit 64? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer says, underneath this photo, is that your true first and last name? Lewis says, yes. Ms. Geddes says, the Government's Exhibit offers 64A. The judge says, any objection? Koenig says, none. So then Government Exhibit 64A was received in evidence. Ms. Geddes says, may we ask it to be published to the jury only? The judge says, jury only. And then the lawyer says, for today's purposes, we're going to refer to you as Lewis. All right? He says, okay. Lawyer says, finally, I'm showing the witness what is marked for identification as 64B. Does 64B contain that same photograph? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, and below there, does it say Lewis? Lewis says, yes. Government says, government offers 64B. Koenig says, no objection. The judge says, okay, that's an evidence. The government says, may we publish? The judge says, yes. And now it's about to get in. The lawyer says, how old are you today? Lewis says, 32. The lawyer says, are you currently working? Lewis says, no. The lawyer says, were you previously employed? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer says, what type of work did you previously do? Lewis said, warehouse management. The lawyer says, are you married? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, do you have any children? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, when were you born? Lewis says, February 11th of 1989. The lawyer said, in what neighborhood did you live growing up? Lewis says, Hazel Crest, Illinois. The government said, where is that in reference to downtown Chicago? Lewis says, 30 to 40 minutes south. The lawyer said, Hazel Crest is south of downtown Chicago. Is that right? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, where did you go to high school? Lewis says, Hillcrest High School. The lawyer said, did you graduate high school? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, when did you graduate? Lewis says, in May of 2007. The lawyer said, so based on being born in 1989, is it fair to say that you turned 18 in February of your senior year of high school? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, what, if any, interest did you have during high school? Lewis said, football, basketball, and music. The government said, what type of music were you interested in? Lewis said, hip hop. The lawyer said, were you interested as a spectator or as a performer? Lewis said, as an artist. The lawyer said, did you work during high school? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, where did you work? Lewis said, McDonald's. The lawyer said, during high school, when you were working at McDonald's, where was it located? Lewis says, in Markham, Illinois. The lawyer said, do you remember when you started working at the McDonald's in Markham, Illinois? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, now, when was that? Lewis said, sophomore year in high school. Government said, where is Markham in relation to Hazelcrest, where you were living when you were growing up? Lewis said, about 10 minutes away. The lawyer said, I'm going to show the witness only what is marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 522A. Do you recognize Government's Exhibit 522A? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, I'm also showing the witness only 522B. Do you recognize that? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, what is shown in Government's Exhibit 522A and B? Lewis said, the McDonald's in Markham, Illinois. The lawyer said, the McDonald's where you worked? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, are those photographs of McDonald's, how McDonald's appeared when you were working there in high school? Lewis said, yes. Ms. Geddes said, the government office. Kennedy said, no objection. The judge says they are in evidence. You can publish them. Geddes says, thank you. And Geddes gets back to it and say, I'll start with 522A. I'm showing what is in evidence as Government's Exhibit 1. Do you recognize the individual shown in Government's Exhibit 1? Lewis says, yes. The government says, who is that? Lewis says, Robert Kelly. The government says, do you personally know Robert Kelly? Lewis says, yes. The government says, do you see him in the courtroom today? Lewis says, yes. The government says, can you point to him and describe an article of his clothing? Lewis says, right there. He has a blue jacket. The judge says, indicating the defendant. Ms. Geddes says, thank you. The lawyer said, do you recall where you were when you first met the defendant? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, where were you when you first met the defendant? Lewis says, McDonald's. The government said, what were you doing at McDonald's? Lewis says, I was working at the drive-thru. The government said, where did you first encounter the defendant? Lewis says, at the drive-thru window. The government says, I'm showing what's in evidence is 522B. Is this the photograph that you just identified of the drive-thru? Lewis says, yes. The government said, what happened when you were working at the drive-thru when you encountered the defendant? Lewis says, I was working a night shift overnight. The Maybach came up to the window. It was a driver up there. And the next thing I know, the Maybach moved forward. And Mr. Kelly asked me who was the lady working that was behind me, which was the manager. And I told him who she was, and he told me, can I hook it up? So I went over there and I told the lady, she didn't know who he was. She was like Hispanic. She didn't know who he was. So I just told her, the guy that sings I Believe I Can Fly. And I went back. I told her, she was like, yeah. And then I went back to the window, and I told him that, she just wanted his number. And he looked at me like, you really did that for me? I said, yeah. He gave me 2 pieces of paper, one for her and one was for me. He told me, hit him up to hang out sometime. The government said, how old were you when you met the defendant at the drive-thru at McDonald's? Lewis said, 17. The lawyer said, what year in high school were you? Lewis said, a senior. The lawyer said, you mentioned a Maybach. What do you know about a Maybach? Lewis said, Maybach, it's a vehicle. The lawyer said, who was in the Maybach when you entered when you encountered the defendant? Lewis said, Robert Kelly and a driver. The lawyer said, there was also a driver there. Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, you mentioned you previously seen the Maybach at the McDonald's. Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, on prior occasions when you had seen the Maybach, there was the defendant at the time. Where was the defendant at the time? Lewis said, I had never seen him, but it normally would only be the driver that speaks at the window. The lawyer said, so it was a little bit different because you actually saw the defendant in the Maybach at the time. Lewis says, yes. So then the lawyer says, what was on the piece of paper, the two pieces of paper that the defendant gave you that day? Lewis said, his phone number. The lawyer said, what, if anything, did you do with those two pieces of paper? Lewis said, actually, I threw the one away for the lady. You know, she didn't know who he was. So I threw that one away and I kept the other one and gave it to my brother and gave it to my mother. I kept the other one and gave it to my mother. Okay. The lawyer said, and you said you threw away the paper. Did you tell the defendant that you were going to throw away the paper? Lewis said, no. The lawyer said, why did you give the other piece of paper, the one you didn't throw away, to your mom? Hold on. Why did you give the other piece of paper, the one you didn't throw away, to your mom? Lewis said, because I was too nervous to call myself. The lawyer said, did you see what your mother, if anything, your mom did with that piece of paper? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, what did she do? Lewis said, put it in her Bible, and she eventually called him. The lawyer said, were you present to hear the conversation? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, how were you able to hear the conversation? Lewis said, she had it on speakerphone. The government said, what did you hear your mother say when she called the telephone number that the defendant gave you on that piece of paper? Mr. Kenny said, objection. The judge said, overruled. Lewis said, she was just telling him on the phone how I was a big fan of his music and, you know, I was like a rapper, you know what I'm saying, coming up rapper. And, you know, to let him know how much of a fan I was and I would be willing that I would love to work with him on my music. The government said, how, if at all, did the defendant respond after your mom told him about your musical aspirations? Lewis said, he was like, he appreciate that. He was fans of his music and that he was going to have a party coming up. The lawyer said, and did he tell or provide any additional information about the party? Lewis said, yes. He told my mother that me and my father and her could come to the party. The lawyer said, now, at the time that your mother first called the defendant, had you spent any time in the recording studio? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, doing what? Lewis said, making demos, like 1 or 2 songs. The lawyer said, and when you said, did you say making demos? Is that correct? Lewis said, yes, demo tapes. The lawyer said, featuring your music? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, did you attend the party that the defendant mentioned in the first phone call? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, where was the party held? Lewis said, at his house in Olympia Fields. The lawyer said, where within the defendant's house in Olympia Fields was that party? Lewis said, in the front room, the living room. The lawyer said, do you remember when the party was? Lewis said, I just remember like around the holiday because I just remember it being cold outside and him having a Christmas tree and everything. You know, it just seemed like it was a holiday around that time, maybe November or December. The government said, of 2006, your senior year? Lewis said, yes. The government said, who, if anyone, came with you to that party at the defendant's house in Olympia Fields? Lewis said, my mother and my father. The government said, now just to be clear, when you're talking about your mom and your dad, was it your biological father or somebody else? Lewis said, my stepfather. The government said, and the defendant's party at Olympia Fields that you attended with your parents, do you recognize or did you recognize anyone at the party? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, who did you recognize there? Lewis said, RKelly and George Daniels. Mr. Koenig says, I'm sorry, I didn't hear that. The witness speaks up and says, George Daniels and RKelly. The government says, who did you understand George Daniels to be? Lewis said, someone that helped develop artists and who I thought it was like best around. I heard that he helped artists. The government said, I'm showing the witness what's been marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 90. The government said, do you recognize Government's Exhibit 90? Lewis said, yes. The government said, what is Government's Exhibit 90? Lewis said, George Davis. Government offers Exhibit 90. The court said, any objection? Koenig said no. The judge says, all right, that's an evidence. So then the government says, may we publish this, please? The court said yes. And then the lawyer came back and said, what, if any, interaction did you have with George Daniels at the defendant's party? Lewis said, my mom told him that she had let him know about my good music so that I was an up-and-coming artist trying to get into the music industry. The government said, and did you hear how George Daniels responded? Lewis said, yes. He would say, we should try to get him to work with Rob. And if he is willing, what do you want to do? Then the lawyer said, and was the defendant present for that initial conversation between your mom and George Daniels? Lewis said no. The lawyer said, did you have an opportunity to speak with the defendant at the first party that you attended in Olympia Fields? Lewis said yes. The lawyer said, and what was the content in which you spoke with the defendant? Lewis said, we had took a picture together. George Daniels had took it on my phone at the time, and he had the picture. And after the picture, he told me in my ear that maybe it will be best sometime if I come to the party by myself. The government said, now, you said that we had taken a picture together. Who did you mean by we in that sentence? Lewis said, Robert. The lawyer said, and was George Daniels present when there was a picture taken? Lewis said, yes, he took the picture. The government said, using your phone? Lewis said, yes. The government said, and who was the picture of? Lewis said, me and Robert. The government said, and how did it come to be that George Daniels took a picture of you and Robert? Lewis said, he told me that, this kid, he had told him that this kid is trying to do music and maybe you should give him one shot. Okay. The government said George Daniels told the defendant that you were trying to do music. Is that right? Lewis said yes. The lawyer said, now, you said that someone whispered something in your ear. Is that correct? Lewis said yes. The lawyer said, who whispered something in your ear? Lewis said, Robert. The government said, the defendant? Lewis said, yes. The government said, what did the defendant say to you? Lewis said that it would be best if I come by myself to the party next time. The government said, and who had come to the party? Who had you come to the party with? Lewis said, my parents. The government said, did you see the defendant again after the party? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, how did you come to see the defendant again? Lewis said, my mom took me over there to go to the studio. Government said, how did it come to be that you were going to the studio with your mom? Lewis said, my mom called him again. The lawyer said, were you present for that conversation? Lewis said, yes. The government said, and what, if anything, did you hear from your mom say when she called the defendant a second time? Lewis said, still telling him that I wanted to do music and I had been working on my music. The government said, how did the defendant respond during that phone call or phone conversation? Lewis said, he told my mother to bring me back to the studio. The lawyer said, where is the studio located? Lewis said, downstairs. The lawyer said, downstairs with respect to what? Lewis said, downstairs in his house in Olympia Fields. The lawyer said, the same location where the party was held. Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, and did you in fact go back to the defendant's house? Lewis said, yeah. The lawyer said, well, who brought you there and how did you get there? Who brought you and how did you get there? He said, my mother. The lawyer said, and did your mother stay with you at the defendant's house that day? Lewis said, no. The lawyer said, what did she do? Lewis said, she dropped me off at the gate. The lawyer said, can you describe the outside of the defendant's house in Olympia Fields? Lewis said, when I first arrived, it was like a big black gate. Like it's a very long driveway. The house was on the right, like right in front of you. It's a very big house. And to the right is the garage. The government said, and I'm showing what's the evidence as government's exhibit 502A. So then the government said, do you recognize that? Lewis said, yes. The government said, what is that? Lewis said, that's Robert's house. The lawyer said, and is that the gate where you just referred to where my pen is located? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, and I'm showing 502C. Hey, y'all, let me go run and grab something to drink. I'll be right back. Actually, I got to run down and take some money to the guy cutting my grass. So I'm going to grab something to drink. If y'all don't mind, while I come back, go ahead and hit the like button. I will be right back. Okay? Thank you. All right, y'all, I'm back. Sorry about that. Okay. All right, let's get it. All right. The lawyer says, do you recognize that? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, what is that? Lewis says, that's Robert's house. The lawyer says, now just to be clear, is that the house that you went to for both the party and that second time when your mother dropped you off? The lawyer said, yes. I'm sorry, Lewis said yes. The lawyer said, now when you went to the defendant's house that second time, how were you able to get through the gate? Lewis said security was at the gate. The lawyer said, do you recall who was present or serving as security? Lewis said, yes, her name was Candy. Lawyer said, I'm showing you what's in evidence as Government's Exhibit 22. Do you recognize Government's Exhibit 22? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, who is that? Lewis says, Candy. Lawyer says, and is that the Candy who helped you through the gate that day? Lewis said, yes. Government said, what happened after your mom dropped you off at the gate? Lewis said, I got to the studio. I had to wait for a little while. I sat in the waiting area to wait. Then Rob came down, him and another gentleman. We went to the studio together, and he was like, all right, let me hear what you got. At that time, I had, a little like a cassette tape, with the instrumental on it already, the instrumental, and it had the instrumental on the tape. I played the tape, and I started to rap for him. The lawyer said, and you said Robert. Who were you referring to? Lewis said, Robert Kelly. The lawyer said, and how did they respond after you started to rap to the instrumentals on the cassette tape that you bought? Lewis said, they said I sounded pretty good. They said you got some potential. The lawyer said, what, if anything, did you hear them say? Lewis said, they told me I got some potential. Government said, now, did you recognize or did you learn the name of the other individual who was there that day? Lewis says, yes. Government said, who was that? Lewis said the name was Pat. Government said, what did you understand Pat's role to be? And why was he there? Why did you understand that he was there? Lewis said he was like, I'm not sure if he was like music, like someone who helped with the music, like the production of music. Ms. Geddes says, I'm showing the witness only what's been marked for identification as Government's Exhibit 51. Do you recognize Government's Exhibit 51? Lewis says, yes. The government says, who is that? Lewis says, that's Pat. Government says, is that the individual that was with the defendant in the studio that day? Lewis says, yes. The government says, the government offers Exhibit 51. Candy says, no objection. The judge says, okay, it's an evidence. Exhibit 51 received an evidence. The judge says you can publish it. Geddes says, thank you. And then the government comes back and says, now, after you performed for the defendant and he indicated that you had talent, or they indicated that you had talent, what happened? Lewis says he had left for a while. He said he had something else to do. He left out for a while, and I was still there with Pat. And he told Pat to play a couple more beats for him and see what he can do with those beats. Government said, and what did you do? He said, I stayed there and I rapped with him. Government said, with Pat? Lewis said, yes. Government said, what happened after that? Lewis said, after that, about an hour or so, Rob came back and asked, how did it go? Pat told him that he believed I got some talent and that you should give him a shot. Government said, and what happened next? Lewis says, Rob invited me to come back the next day. He said, come back tomorrow. We'll work on some more stuff. The government said, did you in fact come back the next day? Lewis says, yes. The government said, where did you go? Lewis said, to the studio again. Lawyer said, and was this the studio that in the defendant's house in Olympia Fields? Lewis says, yes. Government said, what happened when you went back the next day? Lewis says, he put me in like another room in the studio downstairs in the studio area, and they played. They had a beat already selected for me, and they told me to write to it and that they was going to put me in the studio to record it. The lawyer said, now, you said that they have put you in a room. Who are you referring to when you say that? Lewis said, Rob told his engineers to put me in a room and play the track for me and let me write to it. The lawyer said, and what did you do then? Lewis said, spent about an hour or so in the room and was writing to the music, to the beat. The lawyer said, and who, if anyone, was present in the room with you when you were doing that? Lewis said, it was just me in the room. The lawyer said, and what happened after you spent an hour in that room by yourself? Lewis said, then I went to the recording studio and recorded that song. The lawyer said, and was anyone present when you recorded that song? Lewis says, yes. The government said, who was present? Lewis said, one of the engineers. The government said, and what happened after you recorded that song? Lewis says, after I recorded it, maybe about a little after about maybe 30 to 40 minutes, not sure, but it was a little while after, then Rob came downstairs and he let the song play for me only 5 seconds and said he didn't like it. The lawyer said, and when you said he let the song play for only 5 seconds, what song are you referring to? Lewis said, the one I had just recorded. The one I had just recorded. Then the lawyer said, and who was the he who let the song play for only 5 seconds? Lewis said, Robert Kelly. The lawyer said, and he said he didn't like it. Is that correct? Lewis said, correct. The government said, what did you do after the defendant said he didn't? He didn't. Oh, by the way, the 5 seconds that had been played, what part was played during the 5 seconds? Lewis said, just the beat. The lawyer said, did it feature your actual performance on there? Lewis says, we didn't get to that part yet. The lawyer said, what happened after the defendant told you he didn't like it? Lewis says, he told me that I should go back in there and put more effort into it. He was the king of R&B, so I needed to put more effort into it. The lawyer said, what did you do? Lewis said, I felt kind of discouraged, so I just went in there and just said anything, and I left. Hold on. He said, I felt kind of discouraged, so I just went in there and just said anything, and I left. The lawyer said, where did you leave? Lewis said, you say, where did I leave? The lawyer said, yes, you said you left. Where did? Lewis said, I left the studio. The lawyer said, and how old were you when you went to the defendant's studio the first 2 times? Lewis said 17. The lawyer said, did you see the defendant again after that? Lewis says, yes. The lawyer said, where did you next see the defendant? Lewis said, at the gym. The lawyer said, what gym did you see him at? The witness says, Markham Fieldhouse. The lawyer said, and what was the Markham Fieldhouse? Lewis said, the basketball court. The lawyer said, and was the Markham Fieldhouse where was the Markham Fieldhouse in relation to the McDonald's that you worked at? In one in Markham. Lewis said, around the corner. Lewis said, how'd you end up seeing the defendant at the basketball court, at that basketball court in Markham Fieldhouse? Lewis said, because the last time I was in the studio, Junebug, one of his assistants, he told me if I can't get in contact with Rob, just call him. So I had called Junebug, and he informed me that they were playing basketball. The lawyer said, and were you invited to the basketball game? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, I'm showing what's in evidence as government's exhibit 523A. Mosqueda said, do you recognize what's shown in 523A? Lewis said, yes. Lawyer said, what is that? Lawyer said, what is that? Lewis said, Markham Field House. The government said, and that's the outside of the field house. Lewis said, yes. The government said, and I'm showing you what's in evidence is 523C. Government said, do you recognize 523C? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, what is that? Lewis said, that's the Markham Field House. Lawyer said, and is that where you saw the defendant after those 2 times at the defendant's studio? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, and I'm showing you now what's in evidence as government's exhibit 4. Government said, do you recognize what is shown in government's exhibit 4? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, who is that? Lewis said, Junebug. The government said, and is that the individual that you contacted who invited you to the basketball game? Lewis said, yes. The government said, when the first time you went to the Markham Field House, did you play basketball that day? Lewis said, no. Government said, what did you do instead? Lewis said, I stayed and I watched. The lawyer said, now, were you the only spectator at that basketball game? Lewis said, no. The lawyer said, well, where else? Who else was there? Lewis said, it was a couple more guys sitting around and waiting to play, and also some ladies on the sideline. Government said, what, if anything, did you notice about the females on the sideline? Lewis said they was kind of like facing the wall when we wasn't playing the game, wearing like baggy clothes. Government said, what, if anything, did the defendant say to you when you were at the basketball game or at the basketball court that day? Lewis said, I had told him that I had been calling him and he wasn't answering since the last time I came to the studio. He just told me he's been real busy with his music. Then the lawyer said, and had you in fact been calling the defendant after you left the studio that second time? Lewis said, yes. The government said, what, if anything else, did the defendant say? Lewis said, he told me to call him later on in the week and maybe we could hook up. Lawyer said, and why had you been calling the defendant? Lewis said, because I was still interested in doing music. Government said, did you, after seeing the defendant at the basketball court in Markham, did you in fact call him again? Lewis said, yes. Said, yes. The lawyer said, and were you able to get in touch with him? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, what happened when you got in touch with him? Lewis said, he told me to come to the studio the next day. The lawyer said, the one in Olympia Fields? Lewis said, yes. Then the lawyer said, do you remember how you got to the defendant's house that day? Lewis said, that day I had drove. I had just got a car. The lawyer said, and what did you do when you drove up to the defendant's house? Lewis said, this day was a little different. Security guard was not at the gate. The lawyer said, how did you get through the gate? Lewis said, I called Rob. He had opened the gate for me. He was at the end of the driveway. The lawyer said, and where did you take your car? Lewis said, I had parked it in the back near the garage area. Lewis said, and what did you do after you parked your car in the back near the garage area? Lewis said, well, we had went into the garage, where it was set up more like a boxing ring or workout area. Government said, if at all, was the garage attached to the defendant's studio? Lewis said it was not attached. The government said it was a detached garage. Lewis said yes. The government said, who went into the detached garage? Lewis said, me and Robert. The government said, and you said that there was, can you describe what was inside the garage when you and the defendant went in there? Lewis said, a boxing ring and workout exercise equipment. Government said, what happened when you and the defendant went inside that garage? Lewis said, we had sat down and talked for a little while, and he was just asking me, what was I willing to do for the music? The government said, how did you respond when the defendant asked you what you were willing to do for the music? Lewis said, I started naming some crazy things, as in, I will carry your bags. I always have your bag. Anything you ever need, I'll be willing to do. The government said, how old were you at this time? Lewis said 17. The lawyer said, how did the defendant respond when you offered to do those things to make it in the music world? Lewis said, he just kept saying, no, that's not it. That's not it. So then the lawyer said, what happened next? Lewis said, he then asked me, did I have any fantasies? The lawyer said, how did you respond? Lewis said, I said, yeah, I got fantasies. The lawyer said, and did you tell the defendant what those fantasies were? Lewis said, yes. The lawyer said, what did you say? Lewis said, I told him I had fantasies of maybe having 2 or 3 girls at one time. Government said, how did the defendant respond? Lewis said, he had said, you never had fantasies about a man. You and a man? Government said, what happened then? Lewis said, I kept saying no, but he was crawling down on his knees to proceed to give me oral sex. The government said, who did that? Lewis said, RKelly. The government said, and how did he do that? Lewis said, he unzipped my pants down and started doing it. The lawyer said, what, if anything else, did the defendant say? Lewis said, he had stopped because I said I didn't like it. I wasn't into it, and I wasn't getting a reaction, so he had stopped. Oh, gosh. The lawyer said, and did he say anything to you after he stopped? Lewis said, yeah. He just told me we had to keep it between me and him. Like, we family now. We like brothers. We like brothers. The lawyer said, what did you do next? Did you stay at the defendant's house? Lewis said, not yet. He walked me outside and he was taking me near my car. And I'm like, I thought we was going to the studio. You said you got some people over here and they was going to listen to my music. And he was like, man, not today, man. Something came up and I can't even do it. And he just gave me a couple of dollars for gas and I went home. The government said, now, when you say that you thought that you were going to go to the studio, what made you think that you were going to go to the studio that day? Lewis said, Robert had told me that over the phone. He told me that over the phone. The government said, the defendant? Lewis said, yes. Then the lawyer said, after that encounter in the defendant's garage, did you continue to see him? Lewis said, yes. government said, how did you continue to spend time with him? Lewis said, because I really want to make it in the music industry. Lewis said, the government said, are you testifying? And you testified that you went to the Markham Field House to play basketball, or you went to Markham Field House where the defendant was playing basketball. Do you recall that? Lewis said, yes. And the government said, now, did you go to Markham Field House after that the first time? And he said, yes. Okay, y'all. So it's at 18:30. I am going to go back on here. Let me see. It is 1:42. I'm going to take my wife to lunch, and I will be back on here probably around 5, maybe earlier, maybe 4 o'clock, maybe 4 or 5. Okay, I will post it. But we're going to continue and leave off right here. Okay, we'll leave off right here. Somebody type in the chat that I left off at page 1830, please. 1830. 1830. Okay. So y'all listen. I love y'all. Thank y'all for coming over. We're going to continue to get into this today. We're going to put in some overtime. I'll be back on probably about 4 or 5, but I will send out a notification so y'all know. Matter of fact, I'll give y'all an exact time so y'all can prepare. Y'all be back here. I'll be back on at 4:30. 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back on, and we will leave off. We will continue from the top of 1831. Okay? 4:30 Eastern Standard Time. I'll be back. All right? I love y'all. Thank you very much. See y'all later. Peace.
Oh, 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 no.
I don't need negative energy, wrap me in positive synergy. I have been doubted through life, been there and done that with trifling people who told me my style would not work. I told them they wrong, they're struggling too long. This song is for you, I'm proving you wrong.
Get out my way, get out my way, get out my way, get out my way.
I'm a genuine person. Like if I love you, I love you. If I don't mess with you, I don't mess with you. It's as simple as that.